Why does the Torah imply that Hashem has human characteristics, such as hands, feet, and a voice?
And this is a continuation to last time that we asked the question about anthropomorphism. And I mentioned, first of all, the idea of hakel, mashal, and melitza. All these allusions are metaphors. And the Rambam spends a lot of time explaining specifically what each metaphor means. Number two, the general concept is Dibra Torah b'loshen b'nei Adam. The Torah speaks in the language of man, using mashal, so it should be easy for us to understand, even though we're dealing with metaphysics, ruchnias. And I also discussed last time at length the idea that the Torah was given to everybody. So therefore its immediate level of communication is to the masses, is to most people. And the smarter people have to dig deeper, and the smarter they are, the deeper they have to dig. And because of this, the Torah is written in very simplistic ways. It should have a very, very broad appeal. Now I want to talk about the Kabbalah, the Kabbalah. The Rambam's approach, the Hakira approach, the non-mystical theological approach is that all of the anthropomorphic form are not true. Hashem doesn't have a hand, Hashem doesn't have an eye, Hashem doesn't have a foot. They're all metaphor, they're all allegory. When Hashem does something which is hand-like or foot-like, we say Yad Hashem and Regel Hashem and Ein Hashem, but none of this is literal, right? And of course, this means that the Torah says a lot of things that it doesn't mean. When it says Ein Hashem or Yad Hashem, it doesn't mean any of those things, it's only a mashal, which is a bit of a problem. Because although it's obvious that it's impossible to say that Hashem doesn't have a hand, and it also makes sense to say that the Torah would speak this way for allowing us to understand it, but we know that everything written in the Torah is precise, and there needs to be a greater precision to these form. So therefore, when you learn Hasidus and you learn Kabbalah, you get a whole new insight. That all of these anthropomorphic forms are not only mashal, but they're actually real. But they're not real in what we call Atzmas Imhus, they're real in Adam Ha'elyon. As you know, we've talked about it so many times, that the idea of Kabbalah is the concept of Elokus, of godliness. Godliness is the face of Hashem, or the form of Hashem, or the expression of Hashem, to which we can have a relationship. And specifically, the idea of godliness has two levels. The higher level is called Ma'od, how godliness is infinite. And the lower level is called Adam, how godliness comes down to what we call vessels that are called Adam, right, left, center, top, middle, bottom, which is the concept of an Adam, of a man that has a right, left, and a center, and the top, and the middle, and the bottom, as opposed to animals and angels that are only Baal Pal Echad, they Baal Beis Palim, they don't have a full set of mides, of kalim, and so on. So according to Kabbalah, all of these allusions are not talking about Hashem Chas v'Sholom. They're talking about Hashemliness, talking about the Lakus, as they say in Yiddish, how godliness is manifest in Atzilus. And Atzilus, there are midas, there are sfiras, there is chokhmah, there is chesed, there is bina, there is gvura. And the anthropomorphic allusions to HaKadosh Baruch Hu are not just allegory and metaphor as they're explained al pi Hakira, but they're actually true. That the hand of Hashem is chesed, and the left hand of Hashem is gevura, and so on. And what Kabbalah adds to what Hakira says is that when the Torah says something about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it has to be true. And it can't just be a mashal. It has to be real. But, like I said earlier, it's not a reference to Hashem himself, it's a reference to Elokus, to Sfiris. But when it comes to the Eibishter himself, there's no question about it, that Hashem is Pasha v'tachas apshitos, and Chas v'Sholom to say that Hashem has any kind of form, any kind of limitations, and so on and so forth. And it's known, I want to finish with this vod, this Bavusta Zach, that the Rambam wrote in Hilchos Tshuva, that there's something called a min. It's a category of heretic, and this Chamisha Akruya minim, there's 5 different kinds of minim. And one of them is that Hashem has a guf and a gvi, Hashem has a form, a body. Guf or keach beguf. So the Rambam writes, if a person believes that Hashem has an eye, or a ear, a hand, or a foot, is an apikatus. So the Ravid on this Rambam gets upset, and he writes, how could the Rambam say that someone who says the Eibush has a guf and a gvi, as a min, g'deilim v'teiv mimenu holchu b'zu hashita, people greater and better than the Rambam himself went in this shita based on the psukim and the Marei Chazal. So the question is asked, did the Ravid really disagree with this Rambam? The Rambam says Chas v'Shov to say Hashem has a form. Did the Ravid disagree? And the answer that's brought is the following. The Ravid of course agrees with the Rambam. Chas v'Shov to say that Hashem has a hand or a foot. And la'achash nifsaka halacha, if you say this, it's even minus. Not of then. There were a lot of people who went with Tmimus in the Torah. They learned the Torah, no questions. They were not philosophical, they were not theological. The Eibusha told them what to do, they did it. The Eibusha told them that he was angry, so he was angry. The Eibusha was happy, he was happy. Hashem was giving with his right hand, with his left hand, they had no questions. So they read the Torah, the fitumam, with their sincerity, with their simplicity, and understood the Eibusha kvayachol to have hands and feet because they never thought about the ramifications of it, what it really means. So the way the Vart goes is that when the Rambam wrote that somebody who says Hashem has a guf and a gviyah becomes a min, they opened up Gan Eden and they sent thousands of neshamas from Gan Eden to Geonim who for hundreds of years holchu bazu hashita because they didn't question. So the Ravid was not disagreeing with the Rambam la'alocha. He was simply saying that if a person says that Hashem has a guf and a gviyah because he's saying lefitumin not as a philosopher, as a theologian, as a thinker with an opinion, but rather he's saying it mit atmimis and mit apashtas, for that you don't become a min. The minus is only when you say that Hashem has body or body-like parts based on intellectual conviction and some kind of understanding of what the Eibishter is. And this is where the Rambam is saying that you're not allowed to say so. So just to complete again, that in the Rambam, we answered the question by saying that dibetei b'loshem neyodim, but none of this is literal. And in Kabbalah, we say it's much more than dibetei b'loshem neyodim. It's actually literal, but not when you're talking about a lakah, but when you're talking about a lakus, the way the Eibush is mislabish and the Sfiras. There's much more to be said on this, but we're going to leave this for right now.